All right, hey. So it's been 30 minutes a little bit over 30 minutes, but about 30 minutes that these have been sitting and bench resting. And we've got a pretty nice skin on them. Now the next step is what is called a final shape and getting it ready for proofing. So again, I'm gonna leave the camera pointed at the counter so that you can see. I may move it just a little bit closer because I'm gonna be working over here. So these have just been sitting. And the first thing I'm going to do is just lightly dust them on the top here. And lightly dust my countertop. I don't want a ton of flour here. All right, so remember when I said that the dough can sense fear? So you want to do this swiftly, confidently. Your dough's going to be a little bit sticky. You can just expect that. But this flour that we've just dusted on top is going to help it not stick to your hand, because what you're going to do is you're going to take your bench scraper and you're swiftly going to go right underneath and flip it over into your hand and then lay it on the floured countertop. So I'll try to show that to you really quickly. I hope you can see. And I'm going to start with the doughs I did first and move to the second doughs over here. And I may have to reflour again after I've done one. So I'm going to go ahead and wet my scraper. And 1, 2, 3. So just like that. It didn't stick to my hand because of that light dusting, and my hand was dry. So what I'm going to do, see if I can get you just a little bit closer here. So right now I have the sticky side up. I've got it laying in flour, and I'm going to just wet my fingers, just my fingertips a little bit, so that I can pick this dough up without it sticking. And I'm just going to spread it out a little bit. And this is called a letter fold. So you take this farthest away from you and pull it almost all the way over. Then you're going to take these sides, you're going to kind of pull them out, and you're going to fold those over and kind of give it a little tuck down here. Then you'll take the side closest to you and stretch it all the way across, and that becomes the seam on the bottom. Then you're actually going to, basically what you're doing is, I'm kind of messing this up actually, to be really honest. I should have left that seam up at the top. Let me see if I can salvage this at all. I really want to try and protect that skin that I had, because what you're trying to do is get a tense skin. So I may just go ahead and just do this again. All right. So really, I think that just shaping it again this way is just fine. I'm going to get some of this flour on my hand so that my hand is floured again. And I'm going to take, so this is what's called a banneton. This is a cane banneton. And this particular shape is called a batard. It's kind of more oval. You can get round, which are called boules, and the ovals are called batards. And what I'm going to do, I have used this many times, and I have floured it, but some of the flour will stay and it kind of builds up a little bit of a crust. It's kind of like seasoning, like when you season a cast iron or something like that, or a griddle. So you do want some residual flour to stick, but you do want to flour it as well. And then what I did is I actually have put some wheat germ on the bottom, and that is going to add some beautiful brown color. It's going to help it to not stick. So again, just swiftly and confidently onto my floured hand. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to scoop and dump. That's what I'm looking for, just like that. And so these are actually going to go into the fridge and proof overnight. And I'll do a couple more for you so you can see that again. And I am gonna flour my countertop again. The reason you don't want too much flour is when you're doing that shaping. I was actually trying a different shaping technique, which is why that went kind of wrong. But when you're doing that shaping, you actually want the dough to be a little bit sticky. So again, get a little bit of flour on my hand, confident, quick scrape, and flop. And I probably have enough flour that I don't need to wet my fingers, but I'm gonna go ahead and do that anyway. And I'm gonna stretch it out. I don't wanna be too rough with it, just because I don't wanna pop, you know, that bubbles and that great air that we've got in there. I'm going to go this way, oops, this way, and this way, and this way, and this way. This is how I normally do it. And then I'm gonna take this end and roll it and put my seam on the bottom. So now I have that nice taut skin that I was looking for. I'm gonna take some of this flour from the countertop and just give that a tug across the countertop to kind of seal that. Flour my hand, get my second batard or banneton, and then again, just another quick scoop and flop. Now this one, you can still see a little bit of the seam. It's really not a big deal because this is gonna be at the bottom, but you can do this little stitch thing if the dough is wet enough, if you don't have too much flour on it, where you just kind of just tug it crossways, like you're giving it stitches, and you can kind of just seal that up. And especially on the ends, sometimes I'll just pinch those together. So you can see how I just kind of stitched that seam together. That one's ready. And since I have to do it anyway, let me do one more and then I'll show you how to do it without a banneton. Flour my hand. Confident, quick, scoop, and flop. This one's got some nice puff to it. All right, fold that in. Cross, 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 cross. Pull this end and start rolling. Yeah, I like my regular way of shaping better. This does, see how you get that little roll in the end? That's the part that you're gonna kind of stitch and pinch together. But if you pull it with your bench scraper, normally you can get that seam sealed. All right, okay. I'll do this one in the batard. Scrape and flop. Pretty good seam sealing. I'll just kind of stitch this end together. And these are going to proof, like I said, overnight in the fridge. And I'll probably get where I can get a couple of them baked very first thing early in the morning if I get up about 5:30. But you can leave them in the fridge. I just wouldn't wait too long the next day to bake them because they will continue to proof. And you can overproof them. And again, there's all kinds of factors, the dough, the temperature of your fridge, but usually if I bake these straight out of the fridge the next day, if I let them sit in the fridge too long the next day, they kind of overproof. And what happens is they deflate really easily when they're overproofed. And so you'll have this sort of, that's where you get, if you watch my previous video where I was talking about sort of that marshmallow texture, you can get to where it's too fluffy, almost like whipped marshmallow. It loses a lot of its structure, it collapses easily, and you won't get that rise. You'll still get delicious edible bread, but you just won't get that nice crumb in that rise if you overproof it. Okay, so if you don't own a banneton, I just have one of my bowls and I have it lined with I wouldn't recommend like a really fuzzy dish towel. This is just a really simple cotton dish towel. And for a little bit of extra protection, I have this little pumper deal. It's like one of those self-aerosoling or whatever. I have some organic olive oil in here. And I don't want a lot. I just spray a quick little spray. Then I'll take that same wheat germ and just kind of line the bottom. If nothing else, it's just going to give a really pretty color to your loaf. Then I take my flour, and this flour that I'm using for the countertop and the bread in my hand is the spelt flour. I don't have any, but I've heard that rice flour works really, really well. Since you're putting this on a towel that is going to want to wick all the moisture out of your dough, to keep this towel from sticking, you really want to flour this really, really well. So I'm being super generous, and I'm trying to make sure I don't miss any spots. When I was first started making bread, I was not putting my bread in the refrigerator to proof. So I was working with room temperature dough. And when you have room temperature dough stick to one of these cloths or to your Banneton, it can be a disaster, because trying to turn the dough out, it sticks, and you end up, as you're trying to get it out, you end up deflating it, and it's just not fun. Since I started proofing my dough in the refrigerator, it's a little bit tightened up because it's cold, so it holds its shape better. So even if it sticks a little bit, you have a little bit more forgiveness to try and get that towel off or get it out of the Banneton. So I just find it's a little bit more forgiving. All right, so I've got quite a bit of flour in there. It's pretty evenly coated, as evenly as I can since the sides are sloped. This has got a nice skin on it. And so here we go. I'm gonna spread that out. Roll that in. My hands have a lot of dough on them, so they're sticky. All right, and I'm gonna roll that up. Okay, since my bowl is round, I'm kind of doing like I did in the pre-shape, and I'm kind of getting a little bit more of a round shape to this. So I can go ahead and kind of do some twists on there. Get a little flour on my hand. I don't need much, that's all I have. And lay that gently. And the nice thing about doing the towel is you can kind of manipulate it to get it laid down flat in there. And what you might want to do is just go ahead and just add a little bit of flour around the edges. All right, so that's it. These are all gonna go into the fridge to proof overnight. I'm gonna bake them tomorrow, and I'll jump back on when I'm ready to do my lame cut. So you actually will slice the top of your loaf, and that's gonna give it a way to expand. You can also do some pretty designs in there, but that will be first thing in the morning. Good night.